we need to be tapping into and engaging with that curiosity that young people have, that children have, and saying, you know what, yeah, the Bible, the Christian faith can stand up to the rigours of our questions.
The Profile. You're listening to Premier Christian Radio.
Where faith comes to life.
Welcome to The Profile on Premier Christian Radio. I'm Ruth Jackson, and The Profile is a show where we sit down with a well-known Christian to hear more about their life, faith and ministry. The Profile is brought to you in association with the UK's leading Christian magazine, Premier Christianity. The monthly title features more interviews just like this one, the latest news, reviews, columnists and more. To request a free sample copy of the latest issue of the magazine, visit premierchristianity.com/free sample. Today on The Profile, I am speaking to Clare Williams, who will be joining us for the Unbelievable Conference next Saturday, the 15th of May. Clare will be speaking alongside New Testament scholar N.T. Wright, apologists Josh and Sean McDowell, and best-selling historian Tom Holland. Together we will be looking at how we can tell the greatest story ever told in the midst of a post-COVID world. You can find out more and book tickets to join our online conference from the comfort of your own home at unbelievable.live. That's unbelievable.live. Clare Williams is the founder of Get Real, and she's currently studying for a Masters in Culture, Diaspora and Ethnicity at Birkbeck, University of London. Hi, Clare.
Hey Ruth, it's great to be here.
Well, first of all, what is Get Real? Tell us a little bit about kind of the inspiration behind that.
Okay, so I trained in apologetics with OCA, the Oxford Centre for Christian Apologetics, back in 2018 to 2019. And I had such an incredible time. I learnt so much. But I kind of found that kind of in the apologetics world, there was a slight missing link there to questions and objections that come from the Black community, which have maybe a slightly different approach. And so I just felt that is something that perhaps I could help to try and kind of fill in that little gap. And so that's what Get Real is about, is responding to questions and objections to Christianity, but particularly those from the Black community or around the questions of racial justice.
And why are you so passionate about that?
Well, I think first and foremost, I'm passionate about being able to have an answer and have a robust kind of way of talking about my faith. I feel I grew up in I grew up in a Pentecostal church, absolutely loved it. I had great experiences with God, answers to prayer, the presence of God in worship, all those beautiful things. But I felt personally I wasn't able to articulate certain things about my faith. And so apologetics has really given me the tools to do so. And as I said, I'm passionate about this subject because obviously everything that's going on right now across sort of the media and in politics, all sorts of things, these questions are really coming to the fore, and I believe the gospel has fruitful answers.
We'll come back to some of these big questions and big topics in a minute, but if it's all right with you, Claire, I'd love to go right back to the beginning. Mm-hmm. Were you always a Christian? Did you grow up in a Christian household?
Yes, I'm a preacher's kid. Yes, my
Snap,
dad.
Me too.
So yeah, my dad was a fiery Jamaican preacher. My parents are from the Caribbean, and my dad was Jamaican. My mum is St. Lucian, and we just grew up in church. I spent a lot of time in church, and I became Christian at a very, very young age. Water baptized at a very young age as well, and was just surrounded by hearing scripture, hearing people preach, and all that kind of stuff. And as I grew up, with a real sense of God's presence in my life, but as I said, just feeling like there are some questions that I have that I'm not able to answer, or there are some things that I haven't really heard explained. And so, that's a bit of my journey.
And was that when you sort of found apologetics, when you had those big questions, or did that come later?
That came later. I would say that I think I kind of had possibly not the most healthy sort of split between secular and sacred. So for in the world of work, in my career, you obviously you go kind of like in the strength of the Lord in your employment, but you use certain skills and certain ways of thinking for the secular world, and then you think differently when you come into the house of God, for instance. And I was never afraid to tell people I'm a Christian, never afraid to share my faith. but there was just something slightly missing. And so I became interested in apologetics, I would say in my 20s, listening to certain speakers and thinking, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Yeah. And I also did a short course with the C.S. Lewis Institute, the UK version of it, and it's basically a discipleship course, but it also has an apologetics element to it, and I loved that part of it the most. And so that helped me to get into it. And then around I'd always had my eye on the OCA course on apologetics, but I'd never had that sort of room in my career to go and dive into it. And then the opportunity arose. I thought, right, I'm taking it.
So you were a teacher for 10 years, right? It's quite a jump, isn't it, to go from teaching into apologetics. How different is it?
I think there's more similarities than there are differences. I mean, talking to teenagers for the entire day is very different to kind of engaging with maybe like Gen Z, slightly old millennials, slightly older people. It's just a wider range actually in terms of sharing ideas. But I think the similarities, and I was reflecting on this the other day, I think teaching really took off for me when I kind of learned the utility of questions in order to get my students to think, rather than sort of just getting them to do sort of rote learning, which we don't encourage, but using questions effectively and actually seeing that's what apologetics is about. It's being able to give an answer to a question, being able to question assumptions and presuppositions, those sorts of things. So if you asked me 7 years ago, 5 years ago, what would you want to do? I'd be like, I'm going to be a head teacher. I'm going to, stay in teaching. But, God has a way of disrupting your plans. And I'm enjoying where I am at the moment. And I am involved in some aspects of education, but just not, on the front line in the classroom.
And we're going to be looking at some of the big questions that Generation Z, so that's sort of roughly speaking anyone that was born sort of after the mid-90s to sort of early 2010s. And we're going to be looking at some of those big questions with you at the conference on May the 15th, which I'm really excited about, because I'm sure you have got so much wisdom with your backgrounds and everything you do. But do you think there are any big questions that particularly impact young black people, either Christians or non-Christians? Are they the same sorts of questions that non-black people are asking, or are there questions that are sort of specific to the black community, do you think?
You do get a set of questions from Gen Z that are generic across sort of ethnic background. So, and I think the question of justice, whether that's to do with environmental justice, whether that's to do with racial justice, I think justice is a massive, massive thing. And I think it's such a great way in for Christians. I won't say too much because we'll discuss it at the conference. But I think the question of justice is huge among young people. But what's also happening on the sort of racial justice side of things, and obviously the world has shrunk slightly because of social media. We're seeing so much stuff from the US, for instance. In the UK, people are instantly going live and recording things that we would never have not been paying attention to in the past. With regards to racial justice, what's happening is, if the church is not addressing it, whether that's the black church not addressing it, black majority church, or white majority church, mixed ethnic churches not addressing the issue of racial justice, what is happening increasingly? It is a small minority, but it's a growing minority. You are getting black millennials and black Gen Z turning away from Christianity to maybe Afrocentric religions or to black atheism, and having real issue with some of the idea of Christianity perhaps being a white man's religion, thinking about the Bible being changed, all these kind of things. So the objections are similar, but they're coming from a different place. And so what are we going to do? And my heart really goes out to my generation, because I know what it's like to have questions and feel like the people you want to go to for answers are not able to answer, or and just feeling that discomfort and having a sense of, well, I think God is real, I know God is real, but these things are hindering and they're barriers to my faith. What do I do?
And there's various studies, a lot of them in the US, that talk about converts to Islam being predominantly young black men. Do you think there's a sense then in which actually Islam is slightly less of a white man's religion, and it's Christianity in particular that is the white man's religion?
Yeah, well, I think the work of Elijah Muhammad in the Nation of Islam is a key aspect of where that's coming from. And I think the Nation of Islam is very empowering to black men. I'm not talking about its theology, I'm just talking about in the kind of stuff it teaches about black dignity and to resist as well. So I think there is an attraction to Nation of Islam for black men.
Clearly you don't think that Christianity is a white man's religion. So how do we sort of spread that message in a way that clearly a lot of these young people aren't hearing?
It's going to take a range of ways, lots of strategies. So first of all, acknowledging that a lot of the early church fathers were from North Africa and then representing them as such in our Christian art. I know that when, for instance, the activist Sean King, he released a tweet back in 2020 about white Jesus, and it sparked, outrage amongst Christians when he released that tweet. But actually, that was the mainstream coming into contact with an objection that has been in the black community for a long, long time. The Rastafarian community have been talking about this for a very, very long time. And so representation matters. If the only pictures I see of Jesus are white, white hands, I'm talking about, as a young person going into church members or family members' houses as a child and seeing the Last Supper, people looking very different to me, you do get this sense of that, okay, I don't necessarily fit into the narrative of scripture. Where is my place? And I think a great organisation, I'm sure Premier have done some interviews with her before, Lisa Fields and the Jude Free Project in America, do a lot of work on talking about black presence in the Bible or black presence in Christian history. So there's this historical piece, the representation, and also Jesus himself as an apologetic. He was an ethnic minority. He was, criminalized. His parents were poor. All of these things that many black people can identify with because of, some of the inequalities that we do see in our society. Talk about Jesus and his, not just as, I think sometimes we need to focus on his ethnic identity as well, and how that speaks to what God was doing at the time and what God has to say about our dignity as people of all races and cultures.
Do you think there are different questions between young black people who aren't Christian, and maybe there's something that's like an objection for them becoming a Christian, whether that's Christianity being a white man's religion or whatever that looks like, and then are there different questions for young black Christians who are within the Christian community but are perhaps questioning some of those things? Possibly.
As I said, I do think black atheism is quite a minority. Even if someone was never a Christian, they may well have been affiliated with church or affiliated with Islam, affiliated with African spirituality. There's a lot of sort of like a spiritual element to the black experience, whether that was a professed faith or not. I think what's emerging for millennials and Gen Z in church is, and I think this is also for those who've never maybe wouldn't call themselves Christian, it's this: where's the evidence for what I believe? Yes, I've experienced this in church, but where's the evidence? Is it backed up by science? Is it backed up by history, philosophy, all these other areas that I'm encountering when I go into university and I hear the objections, and I'm listening to my lectures, and then I'm coming to church and perhaps these things aren't being addressed. So I think having more robust responses to questions and looking for evidence and looking for why Christianity is a rational choice. Those are the kind of things, maybe not articulated in that way, but these are the kind of things that are emerging.
And I mean, do you think that issues of racial injustice are one of the big reasons as well, that either people aren't coming to church in the first place or they're leaving because the church just isn't addressing the issues that are really important to them as young people?
Possibly. Yeah, as I said, I think that there is a growing minority of people turning away from Christianity. I literally had an email not too long ago asking for some support with how a person can support a friend who's turned to the Hebrew Israelite religion. So people are voting with their feet, if you know what I mean, and turning away to things that sound very or are very similar in to some degree to Christianity, it would seem on the surface anyway. And so there is a familiarity with it. It feels a little bit like home, but different. And so you get this sense of Black dignity that comes with it. And I think for me, as someone who's raised in the Black Pentecostal church, only in my sort of adult years have I really appreciated that Sunday after Sunday when I went to a Black majority church, although, you know, the preacher didn't get up and say, "Welcome to Black church." That didn't happen. But my dignity as a Black person was being confirmed every Sunday when I saw, you know, people who may be in church leadership, you know, taking on great roles, you know, singing, preaching, you know, being very creative, being used by God, deal with, you know, racism in the wider society. And then you've seen them, myself included, you know, part of corporate worship, and it's like, wow, yes, I am a person and I do deserve to be treated with dignity. And I don't think, as I said, I don't think that's like overtly said in the Black majority church, and I think, you know, people of all races are welcome. However, there is that sense. I really do appreciate it now.
Claire, this is a massive, massive topic, but how do we even begin to respond as a church to issues of racial injustice?
Yeah, it is a huge topic, and I don't think it's going to be going away for some time, to be honest. So I think acknowledging the fact that it's here to stay for a little bit, okay, you know, kind of thinking like it's going to die down in a few months' time, I think that's to do it, not to do it the justice it deserves. And I think the first thing to do is to listen to your Black friends, your Black peers, listen to them, resist the reflex to offer an alternative to what they're saying. I think listening and believing as well. I did find, particularly last year, looking at a lot of stuff, I would say, in the Christian world, Christian evangelical world in particular as well, at just my white brothers and sisters not believing Black Christians when we're saying this stuff is happening and we're affected by it. And so that to me is really important, to listen. And I think we get a good example of Jesus doing that when people who are marginalized are listened to by Jesus, even when the crowds are saying, "Be quiet, don't say anything," and pushing them out. So listening. And I think a good resource to do that would be to look on the Churches Together in Britain and Ireland website. There was a great webinar called A Moment of Dishonour. It was with some Christian academics and Christian politicians as well, responding to the recent UK government race report and how we kind of make sense of that. What is a theological response, but from particularly the Black experience. So that would be a great resource. I would say do check that out if you have some time.
And you're being very humble there, Claire, because you were also involved in that conversation and are also a really important voice in all of this.
Oh, thank you, Ruth. Well, yeah, I'm just thinking of the lineup. I'm so impressed. I'm just like, wow. Yeah, there's some really, really great voices there. Yeah.
Going back to young people, is there one particular question that really plagued you as a young people, or was it kind of a plethora of lots of different questions that you had?
Okay, so as someone growing up in church and literally hearing scripture all the time, I think I had lots of my questions around the veracity of the Bible, around the authority of scripture in terms of historical reliability, has it been changed, those sorts of questions. What do we make of certain passages? How do you make sense, the Genesis account? So I would say my questions were around the Bible, because I really feel, and I did feel back then, that God spoke to me through scripture. But then if that comes into question, what do? Your whole world is turned upside down. So and making sense of the different genres of the Bible, all sorts of things. But mine would be mostly around the Bible. And I think a lot of my friends would say, Claire loves the word, she loves the Bible. And so a lot of my anxiety, I would say, or questions came around that. And I just remember listening to a lecture, again with the C.S. Lewis Institute, with Tom Price. He talked about the Bible, the historicity of the Bible, and then reading Amy Ewing's book, Why I Trust the Bible, and just feeling so refreshed and thinking, why didn't I know this? And I think that's my heartbeat for young people of all different backgrounds, to give them this information sooner rather than later. They shouldn't have to encounter it when they're an adult, and dealing with lots of other different issues. I think the sooner we get this information into the hands of our young people, the better. And I think William Lane Craig makes a great case for this in his book Reasonable Faith, where he says, look, the church, yes, we teach sort of Bible stories in our Sunday schools and all that kind of stuff, but you can start apologetics with young people from a young age, because they're questioning. What's a child's favorite question? Why? I have a niece and she's, Auntie Claire, why? What? And then, so I think we need to be tapping into and engaging with that curiosity that young people have, that children have, and saying, the Bible, the Christian faith, can stand up to the rigors of our questions. We might not like all the answers, but there are some really fruitful and really robust answers that the Bible can give to life in general. So I would say mine question was definitely around the Bible, so I've gone off on a tangent there, getting excited. But I also think maybe for young people today, the questions are more existential, about purpose, identity, who am I, those kind of things.
And how do you think we do what you're saying there practically? How do you think we create a space where actually apologetics is just kind of part and parcel of what we do at church? Because clearly that we're not going to be like studying rigorous academic texts and things like that. We've got to be doing it in an age appropriate way. But what do you think that looks like?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I'm involved in the youth work at my church and trying to do exactly what you're saying. But I think it's good to listen to what the questions are from your young people. So we had a bit of a session with our teens, just listening to, what topics you want to do, and also kind of like doing some surveys. What are the topics you want to do? But again, with that, there's a caution not to let theme and topic take precedent over scripture, right? Just because we're doing, the topic of, conquest narratives in the Bible, or that's not a good example. Just because you might be doing, let's say we do the topic of racial justice, okay? There's nothing wrong with reading an entire book of the Bible and going through that and seeing what there is in that text which speaks to that, rather than just picking scriptures from anywhere. So our young people have no context of what the scripture's about, what the book of the Bible's about. So that, for me, I always have that in mind. So at the moment we're reading through the book of Mark in my church with the young people, and just, it's been really, really good. So sorry, I keep going off on a tangent, but so I think it's about listening to their questions. What do they have questions about? And not shying away from the fact that Christianity does make exclusive claims about the world, and not apologizing for such, because every worldview makes exclusive claims about the world. And so what we do then is to compare, not to put down our brothers and sisters from different religions or no religion, but actually say, when you bring the deepest questions of your heart, when you bring the toughest questions of your mind, which worldview responds the most fruitfully? Which worldview corresponds with your sense of what the what the world is about? Because that sense is something that comes from God as well. So, I'll stop there.
Claire, if you could go back to your teenage self, knowing everything that you sort of learnt along the way, is there any advice that you would give to Claire as a 15-year-old?
Yeah, I would say to myself, this is quite cheesy. I would say that you don't have to separate your mind from your faith. Worship experiences, seeing God and hearing about the supernatural, those kind of things are not separate from a rational thinking mind. And there's great evidence for us to make Christianity a rational choice for us to live our lives by.
How do we find out more about Get Real and some of the things that you're up to?
You can follow me on Instagram at getreal321, and you can go to realquestions.co.uk and just check out some of the events there. The events there is always being updated, so you'll see links there to different places I'm speaking at or stuff like that. So do check out the website and the Instagram page.
Clare Williams, thank you so much for joining us today and for all of your wisdom. And obviously you can hear much more from Clare at the Unbelievable Conference on May the 15th. Get yourself a ticket for the conference if you've not got one already by heading to unbelievable.live. Thank you for listening to part 1 of The Profile. That was Clare Williams speaking to me, Ruth Jackson, here on Premier Christian Radio. Clare will be one of the speakers at our online Unbelievable Conference next Saturday, the 15th of May. She will be joined by New Testament scholar N.T. Wright, apologists Josh and Sean McDowell, and best-selling historian Tom Holland. Together we will be looking at how we can tell the greatest story ever told in the midst of a post-COVID world. You can find out more and book tickets to join our online conference from the comfort of your own home at unbelievable.live. That's unbelievable.live.
Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.